welcome everyone to our DIACC Research and Academia Forum. The Research and Academia Forum is an opportunity for us. It's an online event that we cultivate at the DIACC as an opportunity to connect the expertise of the research and academia sector with the digital identity, credentials, and trust space. There are many overlaps here, and so we'd like to have the opportunity to identify areas of common interest, to amplify those areas where we might be interested in collaboration, and really to listen and to learn from each other and from our audience. So we're thrilled to have you for this Research and Academia Forum. For the folks in the room, if you have questions, feel free to enter them into the chat. We'll work through them as part of our Q&A at the end of today's session. And for those of you who are DIACC members, the session will be available. The first portion of today's conversation will be available on demand. We have some fantastic guests joining us today, which I will introduce in a moment. I will remind everyone of the group that we always speak to each other with trust and care, and so I know that we've always had a very respectful group of attendees, and I expect today to be no different. So when you're speaking with your colleagues and friends in the chat, we always appreciate that respectful and safe environment. So I'm Joni Brennan. I'm the president of the Digital ID and Authentication Council of Canada, and the work that we've done today is supported by our working group, by our members who are focused on outreach. And today's topic is to discuss examples and methods for how we can work together, how we are working together for creating and amplifying and supporting an inclusive workforce, and for us particularly inclusive digital trust workforce, so the space of digital and technology and cyber and all around it. We know that advancing inclusion does require investment in working together and an investment to help students to get that passion, to get involved, and to connect their insights for the type of design thinking that connects the individual experiences toward common goals. We truly believe that education and the education ecosystem is a foundation for the helping people to develop future skills and to prepare for the jobs of today and the jobs that are coming forward tomorrow, and to helping to grow that skilled workforce and to do that in a way that is inclusive. So it's a topic that I'm keen to learn more about and to hear from our guests today. So with that, we will get started into our panel. Now, I am absolutely thrilled to have a fantastic panel with us today. So we have with us Denise Amyot. She is president of and CEO of the Colleges and Institutes of Canada. Denise was appointed in 2013 as president and CEO of the Colleges and Institutes of Canada, the voice of Canada's colleges and institutes, the CEGEPs and Polytechnics, as well as being an international leader in education for employment in over 25 countries. We're so pleased to have you, and thank you. Welcome, Denise. We also have with us Iman Hassini, who is head of ApplyProof. Iman is graduate of University of Tehran and University of Waterloo with degrees in engineering, business development, and sustainability management. Iman has led business development at ApplyProof over the last 4 years and has led ApplyProof since its inception. It's so great to have you with us today, Iman. And ApplyProof is also a member of DIACC, so it's great to see you present with us. Thanks, Iman. And last but not least, we have Dr. Terry Peckham, who is Digital Integration Research Chair at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. Terry has a PhD in computer science, and his areas of specialization include application and data analysis around AI and machine learning towards solving industrial problems. And we were chatting before our event today, and Terry's been with Polytechnic for nearly 20 years. So fantastic career in Saskatchewan Polytechnic. Welcome, Terry. So with that, I'd like to start us off today, and we'll start with a question that will be for each of the panelists, and I will start with Denise and move forward from there. So first, we've heard just a small highlight of each of your biographies. So I'd like to invite you to add context for the audience of who you are, what's important for you on the space, and your definition of, first of all, what do you think of as a digital workforce? And if your microphone is on, we ask you to mute, and I'll do that myself if needed. I've got it. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So we start by asking your definition of what a digitally inclusive, what a digital trust workforce actually means for Canada as we move forward toward a very, very digital space. Denise, what's a little bit more about you and your definition of a digital trust workforce?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And so maybe first I'll give some context. As it was said, I'm the CEO of Colleges Institutes Canada, so CICAN. So in case you don't remember the abbreviation, I'll just repeat CICAN. And it regroups, in fact, you can see the map behind me. Okay, I'm sure you recognize the map of Canada. In case you wonder what are all those little dots that are purple, in fact, they represent the locations of where our members are, including Saskatchewan Polytechnic. It's there. And so it regroups all the cegeps, all the polytechnics, all the institutes, whether Marine Institute, Justice Institute, Nursing Institutes, as well as 15 universities that have a college mandate. So we are in 700 locations. In fact, 95% of Canadians live within 50 kilometers of one of our campus. And 86% of Indigenous people live within 50 kilometers. I should take the opportunity to acknowledge the territory on which I am right now, which is the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. So what we do at our associations, we do advocacy, we build capacity for our members, and we mobilize knowledge. And we deliver a portfolio of Canadian programs and international programs. So our portfolio is close to $500 million, and we are the largest post-secondary network of its kind in the country. So I have to say that myself, I'm not a specialist of digitalization from a technical point of view. And when I hear that there are other people that, have graduated in computing, I feel very humble. I should tell you about that. In fact, it's because of the pandemic that I'm using a computer right now, because before the pandemic, I was only using an iPhone. And so, as my team said, it just took a pandemic to put you behind a laptop. So on this, to answer your questions, a digital trust workforce for me, it's all about training people to work in a digital first world of business. So that means basically that things like data management and cybersecurity should not be an afterthought. So it is really essential that the principles of big data, data management, and cybersecurity, for me, they need to be embedded across all curriculum and not just in separate programs or programs dedicated to big data or dedicated to cybersecurity. So that means that anyone who studies business or entrepreneurship or natural resources management, anything that involves managing data, it means that our graduates should have the skills to safely manage data online and keep systems secure. And we know that cybersecurity is a huge risk in the world today. The World Economic Forum, in its report in 2020 on global risk, ranks cyber attacks on critical infrastructure fifth on its list of the largest risks to a global order. And we know that here in Canada, Stats Canada reported that 21% of the overall Canadian business population reported being impacted by cybersecurity incidents in 2019. And so that means it's important, and protecting networks, protecting informations, protecting systems, protecting infrastructure, it's now essential. It's an essential part of keeping all Canadians and Canadian businesses, Canadian organizations safe. And I'll just finish by saying, I'm now taking a program. It's a course that I'm taking to obtain a designation on the ESG and board governance. ESG, it stands for environment, social, and governance. Or you can almost equate ESG for sustainable development goals. But I have to say that we had a specific module on the equity, diversity, and inclusions, and I know we'll talk about that later. And we had one module, in fact, last week on data, digitalizations, and cybersecurity. And so the reasons why I talk about this is because nobody cannot not think about data management and cybersecurity. And this starts by ensuring that in the organizations, we have a security culture. We need to have cyber hygiene, if you want. And as they said in my course, this all start at home with our own use of data and how we treat the machine that we have in front of us with respect to cybersecurity. So I'll stop here.
Wonderful. So much in there. And thanks for the stats on the size and shape and the economic impact of your space. It's a fantastic opportunity to connect those details. So starting off with Denise, let's move, which is very broad brushstroke on universities and academia and the economic impact and social impact. Let's move a little bit more to that private sector connected experience. So can I ask you the same question, Iman? What's a little bit more about yourself and your definition of a digital trust workforce, what that can mean?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for having me here, and super happy to have this very important conversation. I am Iman Hassini. I am heading up ApplyProof. It's a startup within ApplyBoard. So I give a little bit of introduction about ApplyBoard, then about ApplyProof. At ApplyBoard, we started in 2015 with a couple of people. So with the mission of making education accessible globally. So far to date, we have been able to grow over 1,600 employees globally. And we have been able to partner with more than 1,600 institutions across the world. And I think more than 95% of all of Canadian institutions are a part of our portfolio as well. And we have been able to assist over 500,000 students globally with their processes and applications. We are keep growing our footprint globally. So what is ApplyProof? During the help of these students learning from this journey, we understand very, very soon that trust is a big factor playing in the role of placing international students into the colleges, universities, and all DLIs. So, and specifically by nature, trust is possible, and always it's hard. And specifically when it comes in the international context, and as an immigrant, I have felt this as well myself. The importance is that, for example, I just make it super simplified. In institutions want an international students, and international students wants to go to these institutions. But as Denise mentioned, and all of us know in this world, we do not know what is happening, and there are so many factors behind the scene. Although the intention is good, but there are bad people in the world as well, and we have to be mindful of the reputation of the institution, of the country. There is a new country. There are so many different risks as well. So the trust, by nature, it becomes a little bit challenging, and it's up to us how to make that happen. So understanding that reason, helping with over 500,000 students, we started ApplyProof with the specific mission of building trust in international students and making this simple trust process simplified between institutions, governments, and the students from abroad. I had the privilege to be leading this solution alongside with my team. So this is about myself and ApplyBoard and ApplyProof. And now go to the definition of this digital trust framework. I think, and being inclusive, I think the important part of it is that it's all of the sector's job, and it's not one person, one community, and one organization. And about the inclusiveness, I'm seeing that being a member of DIACC and seeing bringing this different sector coming together, that's to me is inclusivity. And we think we are part of that digital trust workforce ourselves, and we are happy to see other vendors, private, public, and institutions, associations, member-based organization are joining this concept, and to provide ease to access to these trust frameworks. So what does it mean to develop a digital trust framework? To me is a little bit unknown still, and I keep it as a try to make this trust happen in a digital way. So we have traditional ways of, in the history of human, we have traditional ways of trusting each other by learning the history, by predicting the future of that person or that community or that country. And today we are trying to digitize some of those. And by nature of digitization, sometimes innovation happens. So when something has happened in a paper-based format, so many of digitization has been happening in the past 20 years to bring automation to the paper-based or to the previous old method. And we are observing so many innovative ways from blockchain, from the other parts, to see how this trust can digitally happen, from the authentication perspective to authorization perspective to the digital wallet, and so on and so on. So I would summarize it as we are trying to capture to define this properly, and I'm happy to be the part of these efforts. And I do not think it's gonna end anytime soon. And it never ends. It's an evolving concept. It's our human nature to always try to define it. But the core is the trust, and digitization and digital format is just a method. So and we are trying to navigate that, and I'm sure observing the past progress in the recent years, we are having a very bright future ahead of us. So I'm going to leave it as is. I know more question comes. We are going to get more deep into the concept.
Thanks, Iman. I appreciate that view and that connection to inclusivity and that relation to international students as well. And I think I hope that we're all on a learning journey, and that education always continues in our life. So it's great to be in a space with so many people who are committed to that continuing learning process and advancing together. So with that, I will move to the university space and its impact with the economy as well. Terry, same question, a little bit about you and what's your definition around digital trust in the workforce?
Boy, I don't have anything to add. It was well covered, to be honest with you.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I'm an academic. I can always add something. That's my job. So I am a researcher. I run what is called a Technology Access Center. It's funded by the federal government. And my job is to take the great edge stuff that's done in the university sector and the college, for that matter, and marry that with the business world. So I work with companies from Vancouver all the way through to PEI. and I help them adopt digital solutions, whatever that digital solution happens to look like. Where I kind of fit to this space is I'm a little closer to where the rubber meets the road. I'm actually the one putting the students into these environments and ideally creating highly qualified personnel as we kind of work our way through this process. Additionally, I have the privilege of serving on the Digital Research Alliance of Canada Researcher Council. And the Digital Research Alliance of Canada is responsible for the entire post-secondary network of high-performance computing, and as well as the digital, data management, research data management, data sovereignty, high-performance computing, cloud computing, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's kind of interesting because I kind of play this from both a national perspective, or from that particular position, where we're saying, well, what are some things that as a Canadian set of institutions can we do to help protect data sovereignty? Inclusive, again, is a very large mandate of that particular institution. First Nations data sovereignty is another big one. So there's a lot of those issues. For myself, digital trust. I deal with trust issues all the time. A lot of companies have very proprietary data, very proprietary things that we're creating for them, we're implementing for them. And there is a huge trust issue in terms of making sure, number one, that the company keeps their stuff safe. Number two, that the students are safe and how they're doing things. And this kind of all wraps around that wonderful cybersecurity envelope that's already been mentioned. So for myself, digital trust it's hard to earn. And it's something that hasn't been promoted well. And I think organizations such as this and the companies that are involved are promoting it in the right way. I think, as Iman mentioned, this is going to take some time. But I think eventually, with the right framework and the right promotion and the right adoption, it will create a world-class system that will be emulated. And so that's, I don't know if I answered the question or not, though, but I kind of thought everybody else sort of did, so I just added my 2 cents.
I think you did great, and I appreciate the very collaborative kind of viewpoint on your side as well, and calling out as well the First Nations data sovereignty, and it's the inclusion space is one that is so deep and so wide and so diverse by nature. So it's always, there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn in that space. So and a lot of teamwork and collaboration to be done. So now we'll go a little bit into what I'll call a little more roundtable discussion. And so I have a few questions for you, and we'll work through as many as we can before we get to the audience Q&A. So I'll ask a question. Let me know which one of you wants to answer it, and feel free to comment on each other's answers as well. You can be conversational if you want to. Within your organization, do you have examples of workforce development inclusion tools or methodologies that you're following today that are available within your organization that you can share with us? Would anyone like to start? Denise?
Okay, so thank you very much, and for the question. So the first thing I will say is that, of course, when we talk about inclusion, there are many aspects of equity, diversity, and inclusions in workforce development. But for us, I'll talk about colleges and institutes and polytechnics. So the priority is really being the most accessible learning institutions in the country. That's the bottom line. So it's a sustainable future where no one is left behind. I often say that in the college and institute systems, we're often the first door or the last door, and everything in between. And because we're all for SDG 4, which is quality education, SDG 5 about gender equality, and SDG 10, which is all about reducing inequalities. And one of the way that our members have been very active in their 52, 53 years of existence has been short courses. And nowadays we talk more about what we call micro-credentials. And we've seen during the pandemic a big rise in the number of micro-credentials because it's so essential to upskill and reskill people as fast as possible. So what we did as an organization, and I will put it in the chat box when I will have finished, is that our members asked, they said, look, right now, micro-credentials, we need to ensure that there is a common framework across the country. Because as you all know, education is of provincial and territorial jurisdiction. But people felt that with micro-credentials, we needed to ensure that if we were talking about apples, it was not carrots. So to ensure that we could have a common vocabulary, a common language. So the first thing that we did, of course, a survey, and I will give you some results of that survey and environmental scan of what our members were doing, but also what employers were thinking, what students were thinking. And we came up with this framework. So first, that definitions of micro-credentials that help for workforce development. So it's a certifications of assessed competencies that is additional, alternate, complementary to a component of a formal qualification. So as I said, it can be complement or standalone. It has a quality assurance process. It has to meet specific competencies identified by employers to meet their needs. And it could be stackable, or it could be credited, non-credited, and it needs to be assessed. I won't give you the 7 principles that we have. It will be written in the framework if you're interested, but I want to give you some statistics to share with you the importance of that tool right now. When we did the survey, and this is about a year and a half ago, and it has changed tremendously since then, but there were already 56% of colleges that were offering micro-credentials, either online, in person, or both, and 33% that were planning to do so. And we know that now it's about 90% of our members that are offering micro-credentials. And about 50% of those were in the continuing education sector. But what was very interesting that people were saying is that, in fact, micro-credentials were seen as a way of integrating and empowering new populations of learners, while at the same time supporting the business and the NGOs and civil society by training people with skills that were needed for innovation, development, or commercial success. And one of the things also that was very interesting, and I linked in to your questions, is that the people were saying, especially all the respondents, they were saying, we want prior learning to be recognized in micro-credentials. So the degree to which prior learning assessment recognitions has so far been integrated into the offer of micro-credential really depends on the institutions. But I'm telling you, I think it's the future to ensure that it is integrated. Because PLAR, prior learning assessment recognitions, offers the potentials for prospective learners to skip certain courses or modules of the micro-credentials and proceed only to what they do not know. So I mentioned this because for me, those two are very much related. And of course, you can do a PLAR process, not only in micro-credentials, it could be done in program, but those would be two tools that are really extraordinary. And just to give you an example of how important those are, Conestoga College, for example, they are already offering 60 micro-credentials to their members, to their learners. So this is a lot. Medicine Hat College, Olds College in Alberta is offering micro-credentials. Cégep André Laurando, like I could give you like tons of examples of those, but really part of the future and a way to attract more people to learning and be able to upskill and reskilling. So I'll stop here.
Now you've got myself and anyone in the audience and watching on demand very inspired to go run out and get some micro credentials, because it's what you're communicating is very accessible. So thank you so much, Denise. Does anyone want to add in what you're doing at your organization?
Yeah, so that is really good. I really love that Denise goes first, because so many of the stuff that we are doing is for the same purpose from a different angle. So from the private sector and from the technology company perspective, so it makes my job a little bit easier. So I divide my response into a couple of points. So the workforce inclusion inside Apply Board. So by definition, so inclusion is that we focus on the parts that bring us together rather than the parts that divide us, that exclude us. So we try to emphasize and think a lot about our mission statement and our vision, what we are after that. So by nature, we try to follow that. And our mission is very crystal clear, is to make education accessible. So by core, it defines our scope, and it defines what we are doing and why we are doing. So we have been very lucky to define this mission in a proper way and with proper research and align with the sustainability goals and SDGs as well. So it makes it very easier for us to bring alignments with our stakeholders, whether internal, whether external. So I make a couple of examples of how we try to amplify it internally first, then I go toward other stakeholders. So internally, we try to communicate it and make it clear by some guidelines, by some principles, as we call it, core values that each organization has. So we made it very clear and created committees to amplify these core values and bring people together. So one of our first core values is helping a student achieve success, which is aligned with our business. And in the business, it's really hard to define your customer and divide it from the economic buyer, because we had to choose our battle all the time. We are working with recruitment partners, we are working with the schools and so many governments and the other ones. And we made it very clear that the core of access to education are students and learners. So whatever comes first is a student first, student success first for us, not money, not the stakeholder push, not the other one. So it makes it very clear for the people to become partners of each other, and regardless of any other factor, they try to collaborate with each other on a defined principle. Caring about each other is another very important core value that we put emphasis on that. Delivering A+ customer service, taking ownership, and innovating and improving and making the work fun. So relying on these core values, we try to bring inclusivity internally and build on that. Some committees, grassroots committees, has been created, like Apply Care, even a woman network and African committee. Different committees has been created to raise the voice from the employee's perspective. So we are a diverse company in having and being lucky, funded by immigrants, and by nature, diversity has happened. And being able to give the voice to the people who bring inclusivity themselves was a very important key from the internal perspective. From the external perspective, and I try to connect the other parts as our stakeholders come with the schools. with recruitment partners, with the students. Developing technology in an inclusive way, it's very important, it's crucial. So because easily we can have tens of different VIP passes or different stuff that can earn more money or the other stuff, but always putting a student first and going toward the mission is help to bring inclusivity toward the partners. And we are very clear that with our partners, if we are same on the mission, we are inclusive to everything, and it's helping to the students. So therefore, everybody from any country, from any region, and as you know, for example, when we work with abroad, and our job is to bring students from out of the country, there's so many conflicts that is happening in different regions, from country X to country Y. If we go to an event to country X and not going to an event to country Y, always there is a problem. But when we chose the battle of going to our students or talking about the good things, which is, and pushing on our mission, which is making education accessible, by nature, all of this problem goes apart. And we focus always on the good thing, on the good side, and making the world a better place. So therefore, the human nature is the same. So they follow and they understand, and we always collaboratively work toward that part. From the school perspective, developing technology is very important, as we are dealing with public institutions, with private institutions and government, and we are working with extremely smart people. And also, most of our recruitment has been for North America, Australia, New Zealand, UK. So there has been years of developed system and frameworks, and being lucky having the associations like CI Canada, like DIACC itself, Digital Charter of Canada has been developed. There's so many frameworks that makes this inclusivity a little bit easier, and it helps the conversation going forward. Not all the people are expert in the same subject, but relying on the common ground and common principle is really helpful to bring the inclusivity. And I always emphasize on the part that collaboration and innovation happens all the time together. And these guiding principles that exist are really crucial to be inclusive. So, for example, government cannot say yes to everybody, but cannot say no to everybody as well, because the thing that needs to go. It's an extreme example that if they choose one private company over the other one, or even a public institution over the other one, it becomes a very hard thing. But when there are clear guidelines and principles communicated based on the efforts and how it has been developed, and make it very easy. Similar for the schools, there has been systems that has been developed that we are based on this principle. We've worked with everybody who can meet this criteria. And by nature, these existing guiding principles and the continuous conversation and developing this framework and making them updated is really helpful for us from this part of the perspective, building on the Denise point, that helps us to be included in some of the conversation, and also be inclusive on helping to bring partners together as well in that regard as well. So I'm gonna stop here.
Yeah, I love that you share the inside and the outside view, which is something that we've been working through as well. I mean, the inclusion on our own team, and then inclusion within our community, and these are related efforts, and so that inside and outside really resonates. Terry, what are you seeing?
Sure. Well, I definitely have thoughts.
Yes.
But the hard part is, where do I fill in the gaps? So I talk with industry regularly, because that's who I primarily work for. I'm a post-secondary, yes, but I work for industry. They are continually telling me that the students coming out, usually at the university, I'm just going to pick on universities for half a second because they're slightly trained differently, aren't prepared for the workforce. There's one small point. I come alongside a company and I implement usually machine learning or artificial intelligence, use fancy frameworks to create a solution. The companies usually don't have the staff skills to maintain and run that. So back to Denise's point about micro-credentials, then we come alongside and can then upskill the current staff in terms of how to train them, make sure they're all done. When I look at students both in Canada, when I look at students coming from outside of Canada, employers don't trust the level of education. They don't trust what skills you may or may not have. Transcripts sort of help, but what was really covered, unless they're going to go back to the institution and come up with all this. So a digital trust framework allows us to sort of create a framework that allows us to link both the education, what a skilled worker has been upskilled in, what maybe an international student is coming in with previous experience and education, what a Canadian student who's graduated from a post-secondary has learned in British Columbia, and they're now wanting to work in Toronto. And maybe they've taken micro-credential courses. What does that mean? How do we track that? How do we ensure that the quality is there, that's there? And that digital trust kind of links all of that together. Where we're working at Saskatchewan Polytechnic, as one small example of colleges, we actually do have a equity, diversity, and inclusive staff member. That is their full-time job, to ensure equity, diversity, inclusion is done both in research, it's done in the institution at various levels. So it's a core mandate of HR. So they're in everything that's wrapped around that. So, you know, we are devoting resources towards that inclusivity, but the digital aspect, being able to create an identity that tracks both the education, what they're doing, what they are going to do, and allows an organization or a company to be able to look at that and go, yeah, I can accept that. This is validated by powers that be that are not just that person's resume on a piece of paper that can be easily forged, or coming from some other college that we're not quite so sure of. Because again, what do you do once they've left the country? We can't check every last institution outside of Canada. And then, of course, a large organization such as CICAN, which do represent a lot of post-secondaries within Canada. And of course, there's also corresponding university groups that did the exact same thing again. So there is a way moving forward to marry everything together. But again, it takes a bit of work. And so as much as this is an internal, until we have some resources inside, I think it's actually a broad question that needs to be addressed by both government, post-secondary, and by industry and the various industry associations, if we're going to move forward and make something that just, you know, that actually works both for industry and for education and for people in general. And one more slide. We're going to run out of time before we finish this one. Researchers long time figured out that interdisciplinary research teams tend to provide the best solutions. You have people coming from different perspectives, from different disciplines. But I'm going to take that the next step, and I say a diverse group, even if they're in a single silo, that diversity of experience that you come having people that are from different backgrounds, walks of life, different cultures, actually adds a lot of flavor to the result. And they think of things in slightly different ways, which helps create a very good solution. So not only interdisciplinary, but again, diversity inside a group provides a very, very strong solution. At least that's been my experience.
I love it. You know, it's thank you for also touching into the diversity and what the diversity brings to the outcomes in terms of those tools, and then what you're seeing as results on those outcomes. So I really appreciate that, and I think it's been such a wonderful conversation. So I'm going to do one last question for you all, and this time I want to go in reverse. I want to give Terry the first shot because he's gone last each time, not by plan.
I like going last because I get to hear all these good things first.
True. But I want to get your short and direct, each of you, you know, because our 120 or so members will be, you know, watching this on demand as well, and people within their organizations as well. And so, what one actionable piece of advice would you like to give to people who come to join this conversation today?
When you look at diversity and you're looking at somebody from a diverse background, a lot of times it seems like there's risk. It seems like there is risk. There is sometimes a cost associated with including diversity within your organization. I would say the benefits outweigh both the cost and the risk from my experience. And am I perfect? No, I still have room to grow as an organization in a research lab. We're batting about 40% diversity, but that's not amazing. We should be better than that. Some of that actually industry related, you know, in the IT industry. For example, not many women apply. There should be more. And so how do we promote and grow those particular things? So again, there's also some targeting that has to take place in terms of education, which again, I'm involved, at least in Saskatchewan. We're actually putting programming into the K-12 systems at an early age, trying to influence young children around the 10, 11-year-old mark that these are interesting career paths that they should pursue. And so it starts early. So number one, with your parents. So as parents, get your children. There are multiple opportunities for them. And then again, as a company, take a risk. It's worth the risk.
Love it. Great advice. Great advice. Maybe we'll mix the order. So maybe Denise would like to go in the second slot. Your actionable advice for the audience.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So I think I will go in two aspects. So because this is about digitalizations also and data management. So I would say that we need to ensure that the principles of big data, data management, and cybersecurity, again, I said it earlier, but it has to be embedded across all curriculum. It is crucial to do that. The second thing that is actionable today is to ensure that all of our programs are accessible, because we need to ensure that all have access to educations and opportunities to join the workforce. And we know that there's such a shortage of labor right now. And so we need to ask ourselves very important questions when we designed curriculum. Are our programs designed with employers in mind? Or women represented in our classrooms? Terry mentioned that. Or they represented also in faculty? Because we know that this makes a huge difference, especially in the trades. Is the delivery method flexible? Is it available part-time or online? And how long does it take to complete? Does this program require high-speed internet connections? And if it does, what is the alternative for those that may not have high-speed internet connection at home? Do you have a Wi-Fi parking, or, can students do it from a classroom? Is this opportunity accessible to older students? We have some statistics right now that is indicating that because there were more things offered online, there was an increase in the learners that were aged between 35 and 45. So this is very good news. And is the curriculum inclusive of Black, Asians, and Indigenous points of view? And finally, do non-binary and gender non-conforming individuals feel safe on my campus? So for me, those are all extremely important questions.
Yeah, hear. Thank you, Denise. That's great advice. Iman, you have the last word on advice today.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really good to hear other actionable advice as well. So mine is a little bit of application of all of them into a different format, maybe. So I would suggest that we clarify the problems and focus on solving problems at a scale. And sometimes I use the word to be obsessed with the problem, not the solution. And as a solution provider, our job is to develop solutions. Sometimes we see distraction in the sector and in the community. They're getting in love with the solution, not the problems. So, for example, I love the fact that Denise mentioned that there is a labor shortage, and there are a couple of big problems that are blocked because of lack of, for example, the digital trust framework. I just make an example, and the problem is solving Canada's labor shortage in the next, for example, 10 years. We know that depends on international students, and I'm making this example because some conversation has already started with CICAN and other ones as well. So we know that there is a massive shortage, and it can be resolved. Over 40% of our immigrants are from international students, and we know that this can be resolved with the help of international students. So, but there is a trust framework is lacking from the process, even from the time that we try to attract them. So sometimes very, very old sales methods still exist, and we are trying to attract students for the wrong program. But we know that program X that might be unknown in other countries, it can be very good for the pathway of that students to get to the job immediately and solve the workforce problem for Canada. So to me, that trust framework and developing those type of solutions depends on the problem and needs to solve a problem. So the problem that we keep hearing about it, and I see the whole sector, at least in our education sector and with business and the other, the government is aligned, is Canada's labor shortage. And I see lacking a digital trust framework, converting their credentials, helping them to come to Canada, helping them to find the right program, offering the program in the right method. So can we identify that if they cannot come to Canada due to COVID, is this the same person? Are they taking the course? Are they actually taking the course themselves, or somebody else is taking that? All of it is part of the simple trust systems, and from the time to get graduated, from the time to join the workforce. So focusing on problems and amplifying the problems, then developing solution is my actionable advice. And second one is keep collaboration and innovation open. And I highly believe this type of frameworks helps innovation to thrive, and also other institutions that do not, as Terry mentioned, we are dealing with different sectors, with different incentivizing system, and with public money. It's completely unfair to ask them to innovate at the speed of a private organization, which is financially incentivized to do so, versus not one. So increasing collaboration and providing the framework so they can trust, address their risk management and all of that is super helpful. It increase the adoption of innovation, because we see innovation is happening, problem is recognized, but there is a lack of alignment between the direction of these efforts. So the frameworks can align all of the efforts into solving key problems for the country, for the sector, and essentially for the world, aligning with the SDGs goal and the worldly accepted goals toward achieving the success of these efforts.
Wow. First of all, what a panel. I started the day with, started the session around being centered on listening and learning, and I've certainly learned a lot through the experience and the insights of this panel. So I want to thank you all for taking your time today to prioritize this discussion, and for taking your time to share your experience and your insights on this discussion for us to learn as an audience going forward. So thank you for everything that you're doing for people. For Canadian students, for international students, and helping that workforce to grow and be as inclusive as possible, and to continue to grow that opportunity for everyone. I will, with that, I'm going to thank each of our panelists.